Hi and welcome to Biteable Live. My name's Jared, and this week we've got a great treat for you. We've managed to get all three Biteable founders to join us and answer some questions really around who they are and the story behind Biteable, which we thought was something that everyone who uses Biteable would be interested in because, there are faces behind Biteable. It's not just a web app. So thank you, James, Tommy, Simon, for joining us. What I might do is just go quickly around and ask each of you just a quick introduction about what you do at Biteable and what keeps you up at night. So we'll kick off with James. What's your job title you've given yourself, James?
Okay, so I'm CEO at Biteable and obviously one of the co-founders. The second part, what keeps me up at night, probably just the future of Biteable and what we're doing, where video's evolving, stuff like that.
And some little kids that tear around as well. They keep you up.
And
I'm pretty sure.
Two little boys, yeah, actually they keep me up a lot at the night. That's true.
Brilliant. Tommy, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Tommy Fotak, one of the co-founders of Biteable. I was the original developer / programmer, whatever you want to call it. Nowadays, I wear two hats. I'm nominally the CTO, and I help James out on the business side of things as COO. What keeps me up at night? Servers going down will wake me up, but they tend to stay up, so I get to sleep then. And then, just where we're going, the future of it. It's pretty exciting, and so sometimes you can have sleepless nights thinking about the possibilities.
Fantastic. And Simon, lucky last.
So I'm Simon, obviously. I'm the creative co-founder. So I'm looking after just all the creative within Biteable videos. What keeps me up at night? It's people that make bad looking videos.
I like the implication there too that James and I aren't creative.
We're the ones who make the bad videos, you realise.
Yeah, on purpose. We've written bots to do it.
You've written bots to do it.
And that can
Brilliant.
be anything. Videos that have spelling mistakes, videos that are too long. Yeah.
People who cram too much text into the speech bubbles around your animations that were perfectly laid out until they tried to write a story inside of it.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
A whole page of copy.
Great. So I'm curious just to give a little bit of background and have any of you guys, do you feel that your journey through Biteable has been supported by your careers? Is there jobs you've done previously where you say, oh, I've been able to, learn from that and apply that in Biteable? Or has it just been a case of you started Biteable and everything you've done has just been like off the cuff? I don't know, James, you've probably got the most, as I know it, startup-y technical background. So what job have you done previously you think gave you the best advantage?
I think a few of the jobs have definitely led, to this point, but probably product manager at moo.com when I was living in England. It was very influential to kind of the concept of Biteable and the early stages. Just really amazing product. They kind of were like the first that you could, I don't know if anyone's used Moo, but it's a online service where any businesses can order business cards and postcards and all sorts of things now. But they're the first that really you'd log in, you can make some business cards, receive them, and go, wow, that's probably better than a local agency could have produced and is a lot cheaper.
That feels a bit like Biteable, doesn't it? It's kind of that difference. It's like, lots of people do videos, but wow, that was better than I thought.
Yeah, pretty much. They really focused on like really high quality production, and they really tried to keep the costs down. So it was just a really amazing startup to be involved in, and definitely helped a lot.
Fantastic. Tommy, any experience you've been drawing on for Biteable?
Pretty much everything. So I think when I switched so originally I started as a developer in a consultancy, and that was working on Flash kits, so that was on the web from day one, which was pretty cool. And then I moved into sort of more B2B type stuff, but I worked with the banks on huge recording transactional systems, so getting the feel for massive volumes of data and information, how best to store that and retrieve from it, and then moved into product. And that was really useful as well. Even though they were B2B products, it was kind of a good introduction for long-lived software and what makes it scalable and durable and performance, because like performance is actually a feature for the end user. So that's a pretty cool thing to keep in mind. So just learning how to design and build and scale systems, all of it came into play when Biteable version 0.1 was built, because there are a few moving parts, and having all of them work well together and be resilient, I drew on just about everything I've learned.
Yeah, it's probably testimony to you as a founder too, because quite often, the first systems built can't scale to that size. So it's one thing to have like 3 users on a system at a time. You're now dealing with, thousands of videos being produced every day. So you did something right at the beginning. So that's good.
Thanks.
And then Simon, you're last again. I'll mix it up as I go. But what's the background that's led you to this path?
Graphic design and animation, they were my sort of areas that I focused on after university. And I guess I've taken bits and pieces from different jobs in the past. Worked on short form cartoon series for Australian television, which at the time 1 minute was hardly any time, whereas by internet standards today, it's the max you want to use. Then did visual effects on feature films in some Australian and New Zealand studios.
Anything we can look up and see that you can name, or is it all secret stuff that you can lay credit to?
The Adventures of Tintin and the Hunger Games, but
just so minor movies like the Hunger Games that no one's ever seen.
Yeah. I guess in those environments, there's just these huge CG pipelines. They got hundreds of staff that are trying to work out how to work together, how to get videos to process quickly on massive in-house rendering setups and stuff.
Fantastic. And that's the goal for Biteable, right? We're going to end up with hundreds and hundreds of people creating animations for you as well.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. So Biteable, I mean, how long do you guys say Bitable's been going for? Is it, we're talking, is it 3 years, 4 years? Have you got a date on it?
4 years we've been running.
I've got lots of dates.
If you can cast your mind back to 4 years ago, who was pitching it first? Who had the first pitch? Was that you, James, running around pitching the idea of Biteable to the other guys? Or who was the first one selling the dream?
Simon and I had an agency where we were creating explainer videos for companies. So we were actually rented a little office. I'd moved back to Australia from England. Simon had moved back from New Zealand. We rented this little space, and we really wanted to do a startup. And so we kind of just drank a lot of coffee and argued about startups. And we tried a whole bunch of them in this year period. But at the same time, we were making explainer videos for companies, and they got really popular, and people really loved the videos that we were making. And it pretty much got born out of that. We just kept, here's this startup idea, but everyone's loving this video. And it was a natural kind of progression that we just went, could we actually do a product that does what we're doing manually? Because it's really popular. And I think we just bounced that idea back and forth. And I still remember the day where we had the basic concept down. And I remember telling my wife in the car, and she was like, yeah. That was the moment, until Simon and I kind of agreed on a basic architecture and some of the fundamental stuff. And then I pitched it to Carol, and she said, yeah, and that was it.
By bouncing it around, James is probably referring to him going, can we do this? And me just going, nah, surely not. And then just him just massaging it for a couple of days, and then going,
so
what
James,
if we did do it?
I'm remembering months.
Yeah.
There was definitely a lot of back and forth of tweaking a very loose idea into something that is that's actually an idea we could implement. Okay, let's try that.
And so, Simon, are you the one who holds the quality together? So James is coming up with ideas and going, you can automate that, and you're going, yes, but it's going to look terrible. and you sort of holding it back. And then I'm guessing the combination of the three of you then is, okay, maybe we can do that, but how the hell are we going to scale it? And then intro Tommy, really, isn't it? It's like...
There's a bit more than that on that early stuff, was like the actual video technology to make it happen. How do you actually break apart something that is usually created really custom for each company? And, how do you... We sort of came up with this component system. How do you build a bunch of components that could make something that's kind of like 80% of the way to a custom video, it's really useful to people, but doesn't look really B-grade and is fit for purpose. So...
Yeah, so we actually set up. So we had no back end, no technology really yet. But James set up like a smokescreen page where we ran ads to it, I think, and people jumped on and they put in their script, and then I was acting like a server, but just manually creating the video.
Mechanical Turk style.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And that's how you tested the go-to-market. You basically ran that and you were able to test and say, actually, there's a real demand out there for people who are willing to conceptually pay for an automated service. Hence, let's actually go and build it completely.
Yeah, because at the time, the only videos we'd ever done were videos that had voiceovers. And voiceovers technically are really challenging, and we didn't want to tackle that yet. So we wanted to see if people would still have a high demand for text-based videos. Luckily, around that same time, I think Facebook started muting video and stuff like that. So it kind of was a nice timing.
Worked out quite well. And so how do you think that's changed, like from your original vision when you guys were coming up with this? Do you think it's changed much for Biteable now and how it's presented? Or do you think you've been able to pretty much stick to the same vision and mission since the day you sort of built that first automated system? I don't know. Maybe, Tommy, you've got a slightly different view to the other guys? Or has it been the same story the whole time for you?
Oh, well, I think when we launched, we were focused heavily on explainer style videos, and that was the core, whereas now we're thinking more about video marketing as a whole concept. So it's not just about explainer videos. And also the internet's changed and social media's exploded, and there's rules about video ads in places, and video ads are everywhere, and then there's video social media posts. So it's not just about explainer videos anymore, it's about all forms of kind of communication. So it's the concept's expanded.
Yeah, it's almost like the environment's grown into Biteable and created opportunities. The mission's still the same, but the environment in which you operate's changed completely. So, or at least it's growing.
Yeah, there's a lot more opportunity out there now. People are using video for more ideas, more targets. They're not just going and making a video for one purpose anymore. They want to make one that has several purposes, or they're creating multiple videos for multiple purposes. It's not where we started, which was just explainer videos and these simple little text infographic things. It's now completely different.
Fantastic. So, I mean, I know as much as you guys know that one of the things about the reason they call it a startup or an entrepreneurial journey is because it's not a straight line, right? It's not linear. And so there's always bumps and jumps along the way. Have you guys got any great stories or war stories of hurdles or things you've had to overcome over the last 4 years? It could be technical, it could be business related, it could be anything that you're willing to share anyway with everyone else.
I've got an absolute classic. So we store our videos in Amazon. The original sort of storage mechanism, or the way I'd used to key videos, wasn't overly scalable. And I also found a bug in the rendering tool based on certain names of the structure. So I had to go and reformat all that and fix it. And part of that was actually migrating all the existing videos across to the new indexing structure. And I was a bit of a cowboy and didn't really test my script properly before I ran it. And what happened was I blanked 40,000 user videos. So 40,000 videos just disappeared. But the beauty of the way everything was stored in terms of data and so forth, we could actually go and regenerate them all. So rather than generate all 40,000, because back then we were quite small and that was going to be very expensive, we regenerated, I think, the biggest active 8,000 videos or something like that. We brought them back. So, everyone has a kind of data failure at some point. It wasn't so much data here, it was storage and let's call it optimism. But we managed to fix it and recover from it. And I don't think that would be repeated today, but it's a good thing to stick on the wall to remind any kind of person within the company that we all make mistakes. Anyone can do it. And, my two founders were pretty casual about it at the time, which is nice too, which, it builds a culture of safety and trying things. And that if you make a mistake, you're not going to, one, you're probably never going to make one as epic as that. And two, you're never going to be yelled at for doing that.
That's so interesting, because I think that's one of the things that I like working with you guys is just the founder camaraderie, being on the inside, we never kind of have those. And you see in some sort of companies, founders like standing up, yelling at each other or even like not talking to each other. That doesn't happen with Biteable. You guys, like if you do fight, no one ever knows about it. But I'm curious to know if there's a secret. Maybe tell me that is the.
I think one of the things we've learned is as we grow, like early on it was really easy because it's just the three of us for the first 2 years. So we just divvied up the work and everyone just did the work. And as we've grown and now there's 32 people working at Biteable, it's really about what are our roles in the company and how do we divvy up work. And so it sort of relates both to founders, but also how do different teams and departments work together? Do people actually have really clear roles and responsibilities, and can they just get on with their job without having to, check everything by everyone else?
Yeah, that's fair enough. I like that. So you guys, there's particularly between you three, you feel like you've got really clear distinctions on your roles and responsibilities, and that way you don't bump into each other too much.
Yeah, I think that's the key. You just early on we divvied everything up, and then as we grew, we had a few staff. I think we were kind of trying to make joint decisions on everything, and now there's so much going on that we actually just let's break up who's in charge of this thing. And I think it's definitely this year. I think a big change for us is just people have clear areas that they can just run with.
I think, so we've always been transparent and open and honest and cordial. And one thing you realise is that you don't succeed on your own. You don't fail on your own either. So you've got to set people up to succeed and work together with them and work with everybody. And that's what we're about. We want everybody within the company to succeed at what they do. And if something doesn't quite work out, we'll have a look at it and go, well, where did this fall down? What wasn't in place? Or, did they have access to the right resources? Did they have access to the right people? Were they well funded? It's about making sure that everyone has the tools they need to do what they want to do. And then it's about giving them autonomy. People love responsibility. You think about children growing up, first time they get to do something for themselves and how proud they are. My daughter Emily was talking to me about something yesterday, and it was to do with she was wondering whether or not she was going to be a person that gets to MC the assemblies next year at school. And I remember when I was at primary school and I was in charge of the audio equipment, I had to set it up, get the volumes right, manage the amp through the assembly, and then pack it all down. And she reminded me of that, and I remember how chuffed I felt sitting at the top of the seat there knowing that I had a responsibility that had an outcome that I could see. And I think when you think about business and people and individuals and careers, it's the same sort of deal. People want responsibility. They want to be able to deliver. So you give them the opportunity, but you set them up to succeed as well. You can't set someone up to fail because that just builds a bad culture.
Fantastic. I love that. So I guess from the more positive skew on that is I'm keen to hear about highlights over the last 4 years where you've sort of gone, okay, that's a moment. That's something where I can go, I'll remember that moment building Biteable or changing something. James, is there a moment you look back and go, okay, that's probably the peak moment for me so far, building Biteable?
Early on, I remember when we first made 2 sales in a night. We had a few days where we made one sale, and I was like, it's kind of working. And we got 2 sales in a night. I was staying at a friend's house on holiday, and that was my moment where I'm like, there's really a market for this. This could be a real business. That was an early one. A later one, I can't remember the exact figure, but somebody shared a video with us they had posted on Facebook, and I think it had about 50 million views or something completely insane. And I was just like, wow, that is mind-blowing. We're just, because we're so busy working on the product and, doing the bit of it that you often are a bit removed from what people are doing with the product, and just to, we all sort of looked at it and go, is that number right? And I think we cross-referenced it a few ways, and we're like, yeah, they really got that many views on a Biteable video, and kind of, opened my mind to the power of really good storytelling.
Fantastic. Simon, is there a moment for you?
There's definitely been a few moments, probably. I think the first ever sale that we got, which wasn't a family or friend, it wasn't a professional contact, like a personal professional contact. It wasn't anyone that we'd ever spoken to. It was someone completely overseas, didn't know us, and they purchased it. I think James sent me a text or gave me a call about that, and I was just so happy. I just finished a game of soccer, just drove home, so stoked.
Someone who didn't know, I think it's fairly common. With everyone, it's kind of like, you can sell to friends and families, but when you've built a system and the first time someone actually uses it, I don't know who that person is. We're getting money from strangers. It's like, it's a proper scalable global business now. So that's awesome.
I'll just mention one other thing was, someone tweeted, a teacher tweeted a photo of their class where they had all their kids using Biteable. Which was, I'd heard about that happening through support channels and stuff, but when you actually see it, there's something completely different about it, and it became real. I just thought that was amazing.
That's brilliant. Tommy, you've had the most time to think now of your answer.
So I have a couple really early on. One was sitting in James's living room when I felt that I'd had the rendering engine up and running. I remember asking Simon for a couple of colours that work well together, and they were blue and yellow. I'll never forget that particular blue because I'd never sort of seen it before on the web, and it looked really nice. And I punched in a bunch of text and I sent it off, and then I sat there waiting to receive an email to say, yeah, your video was ready. It came back and I was stoked because we'd rendered a video, and I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, so anyway. But I'd put an apostrophe in it, and then I was like, oh, because the apostrophe had ruined all this other stuff around the rendering, and all the text was all garbled and all munged up and terrible. And I believe that video is still on YouTube on our channel as one of the first ones ever posted, or maybe on James's private one. So after that, I had to go and have a look at how we handle messaging and so forth, and the way I encode it, and then it gets decoded when it's rendered, and I fixed that. So that was good. The next one after that was probably when I built the web app over the top. So we had a full end-to-end video creation system for people. So that was pretty cool. Outside of that, it's actually kind of a lot of those sorts of examples that James and Simon have talked about. And mine's not too different from that. It was when I met someone and I was just chatting to them, and they said, oh, so what are you doing? And I went, oh, I've got to start up with some friends. And I said, Biteable. And they've gone, yeah, I'm a customer of yours. I was like, no, I think you're thinking of a different company. And we're chatting, they're going, you're the video company. I'm going, yeah, well, we do video, but what do you mean? And can't be that many Biteables. And it turns out, yeah, they were one of our customers. And so to actually meet someone on the street, chat to them and find out that they'd used the product, we'd known each other from past, but not realise that that's what I do, that was a real kind of watershed moment of like, okay, this thing's got some reach. People I know are using it. This is fantastic.
That's awesome. I love that. The idea that, you just chatting to someone and then your product becomes real. So that's great. James, I'm curious, given with your title of CEO, you probably copped the most amount of uninvited business advice. I'd love to hear the worst bit of business advice you've been given by somebody on how to make Biteable better or the business better.
I don't think I could pinpoint it down to an individual piece of advice. I think what I learned, which actually one of my mentors said very early on, and I didn't listen to him, was that everyone's advice is situational. And so it may be very good advice for another company or a company at a different stage or a company with that staff, but it may be terrible advice for you. And as an early stage startup, you do get a lot of advice. And I think now we've got a framework for like, where does that sit? What's the relevance of this? So I don't think it's like one bit of terrible advice. I think we just had lots of terrible advice. But it wasn't that people, were purposely giving you bad advice. They just they're not at the stage that you're at, or they've never run that business before, or they don't have your team, or they haven't been in that industry or dealt with those technical challenges. So part of it is just working out, where's the relevance of this advice, and does it fit where we're at now, or is it something we should revisit in the future?
Fantastic. I was going to ask a follow-up question for you, James, which is around sort of if you could do things again, or if you can look back, is there a company that you look at and go, if Biteable didn't exist, you'd look back and go, gee, I wish I'd founded that company. That's one that I'd be really proud of with a bit of envy.
Probably, I usually come back to Moo. This is an amazing company. We still use Moo. We get our business cards there. I love the brand. I love the products. So probably Moo. And then from a fun perspective, Spotify. There's bigger companies out there, and I love music, so Spotify is probably the ultimate for me.
No, fair enough. Tommy, is there a business that you look at and go, gee, I wish I had have been involved or founded that business?
There's probably a couple. I'm a big Twitter fan. I don't necessarily agree with their policies in terms of how they operate, but in terms of what the platform does and its reach and its capability, definitely would have loved that. This may not be factually correct, but this is my memory of it. I seem to recall an earthquake happening once, and it appeared on people's Twitter feed before the earthquake actually reached some people in proximity of the shock zone. So that's pretty phenomenal, that a product can do that. From just a sheer cool kind of tech, I remember being an early adopter of Instagram. I left the platform and came back eventually, but that would be a cool one. I really like what they were doing there. That'd be interesting to watch now because the original founders have left, but the original core Instagram product was pretty amazing. And then from a personal fun perspective, one probably Overcast.fm. That's the podcast player that I use, and it's one of the best apps that I just absolutely love everything about it. I think in part I would like to have done that because I'd like to be the guy who created it. He seems like a pretty smart and level-headed dude, but the product itself is pretty cool, and as I love consuming podcasts, so I think that if I'd been a bit earlier into the space as a consumer, I would have liked to have written my own podcast app, and I'd like to hope that it was as good as Overcast.
It's interesting there. You can see a theme too. You've got short text communication, image communication, audio communication. So it actually fits nicely that the Bitable's video communication, right? That's your quartile of different things. So maybe you are living the dream after all.
Potentially, yeah.
Simon, is there a company or a product that you wish you'd founded?
Yeah, there definitely is. My mind's drawing a blank at the moment. Right.
Something artistic.
Yeah. I guess something doing creative for Biteable. One of the big challenges is you're trying to create things for all types of people to use. And so sometimes I look at the work of great studios. I think, they just make that one piece of work for that one customer, and they can be so specific in every way they would want to. So look, I like the look of a lot of work by there's a company called Buck, which is based in the US and a few other countries, and Australia as well. They just have really great creative animation and motion design coming out.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, last question. I'm just keen to get, some kind of advice for people who might be listening and sort of want something. So if you can imagine someone comes up to you in a pub and wants to get some business advice, and she asks you, what's the habit that I could do, or what's the tip you could give me to be successful in business? What would you tell her in a couple of sentences, Tommy, I guess, to give her the best guide you can from your experiences?
Gee, that's really hard. Simplify and laser-like focus. So at any one time, there's boundless possibilities, and you can do all sorts of things. So what you have to do is simplify that down to the most meaningful thing you can do at that point in time. in terms of like whether it's, so if you're going to launch a product and you're building something like what so people talk about an MVP all the time. Maybe your MVP's out there, but whatever it is, you've got to find the next thing out of the list of many that you can make. And then you've got to simplify that down to the easiest possible thing that you can build and market and ship and all that sort of stuff. And then you've got to focus laser-like on getting that done. Because there are so many distractions at the moment out in the world. It's so easy to be tempted, especially, it's okay to step away and clear your head and so forth, but you got to read documentation or something. It's easy to fall down a YouTube rabbit hole or a Twitter rabbit hole or something. There are so many distractions. So laser-like focus on a very simplified problem probably be you get biggest bang for buck doing that. I guess that's a
good
really
advice.
hard question.
Yeah, it is. It is hard, but I think it's true of almost anybody in their lives, right? It's very easy for us to get distracted and kind of run off doing all the little bits and pieces. And if you don't focus on that one thing that you've really stuck your mind at, and you're only going to produce a whole lot of ordinary bits of work. So no, I think
that was one of the advantages of early Biteable. We'd meet sort of weekly, and we'd look at all the list of things we could do, and then by the following Monday, it was kind of like one thing that each of us had to deliver, and they might be interrelated, they might not, but it'd be like, okay, so this is what I've got to have ready for you two by next week, and each of us had that responsibility, and then you focused on getting that done, and the traction that we made with that approach was phenomenal.
That's brilliant. Simon, do you have words of wisdom for our budding entrepreneur who's met you in a pub?
Yeah, and it's luckily this has happened recently, so I'm got some stuff prepared. But it's basically similar to Tommy in that my advice is that just make sure you can deliver like a lot of value to one type of person, one type of customer, and just make one person really excited by your service, and because chances are if you could do that with one person, you could probably work out how to scale it and do it with like thousands around the world. But don't be worried about
that concept of like 100 champions, because there's a concept, isn't there, of like 1,000 champions or 100 champions or something like that, which is sort of going in the global space. There's obviously billions of people, but if you can find this core group of champions and do what it is they need really well, you'll get this flow-on network effect. I have to find there's a blog post anyway. I got halfway through it.
Yeah, I think a bunch of people do similar things. Yeah, I know Seth Godin talks about tribes and the way that, if you can just win that core little audience, you go, okay, I've won those people over. But people are never one persona, right? So people are multiple things. You might be into soccer, you might be into video games, you might also be a dad. And each one of those are an individual persona you can win over. But that doesn't mean that the soccer player can also be a dad. And so then all of a sudden the dads start talking to other dads and they become video game fans, etc. So I think niching down is it's actually similar, isn't it? Right. So niching down and laser focus, right? So there's a theme there with developing a big product. And then you get to where Bitable's at. You've got 5 million, 6 million, whatever videos being produced. I've totally misquoted the numbers there. So, but there's millions of users and millions of videos being produced. So it goes to show that you can actually expand.
4 million users, 380,000 videos a month.
380,000 videos every month.
Yeah, that's what it was at last time I checked it. I'll go back and look at the charts later.
It's crazy. Brilliant. Well, thanks for your time, guys. We didn't take questions from anyone live, and that's just because I wanted to ask all the questions myself. So if you do have any questions and you have been dropping them into the chat, we will try to ask the founders. If you want to specifically ask one of the three guys something, we will carry it over and make sure we try to get back to you in the chats below in Facebook. But thank you so much, guys, for joining the show. I hope everyone's really enjoyed it. And maybe we can make this an annual thing and get the guys back again in a year's time. But that's all from us now. We'll sign off and we'll see you next week on Biteable Live. Thanks so much. Cheers.